The first thing I saw when I opened the envelope was the photograph of a man. His lifeless body was slumped over the steering wheel of a black salon car, his blood pooling on the dashboard. The next thing I saw was a printed note. "This is what happens to those who dig too deep." I stared at the photo for a long time, the chill creeping up my spine. The man was a familiar upcoming journalist who had been investigating a Nigerian senator rumored to be involved in something sinister. Now, he was dead, and the message to me was clear. But I wasn't backing down. I am Celine Yusuf, an investigative journalist. The envelope was among various documents and papers slipped under my office door when I got to work that morning. This was the first concrete warning I have received ever since I started poking around the activities of this politician. For weeks, I'd been chasing leads about Senator Sam Ibrahim, one of Nigeria's most powerful politicians. His reputation has been that of a polished disguise in philanthropy, progress, and integrity. But the cracks in that image revealed something darker. I started digging after receiving a tip from a nervous whistleblower who claimed to have worked for the senator. "He is hiding something big," the man had told me during one of our hushed meetings at a rundown restaurant in Abuja. "What he is hiding is something that will destroy him if it ever comes out," the whistleblower told me cautiously. The last time I met him, he rarely stayed long enough to provide many details. His suspicion was intense, eyes dashing to every shadow. He went on, "I can't tell you more, but if you follow the money, you'll find your big story." Then, just like that, he got up and dashed out. Sitting here, staring at the photograph in my hand, I realized the stakes were higher than I imagined. Someone had already died trying to expose the truth. Would I be next? But this is not a story to walk away from. It wasn't in me to quit. Not when I was this close to uncovering a story that could shake the nation. Later that evening, I found myself parked outside the extensive gates of one of Abuja's most exclusive estates. The whistleblower's mysterious advice had led me here. Over the past 3 weeks, I had traced a series of suspicious transactions connected to companies allegedly owned by the senator. Billions of naira had vanished into thin air, and the money trail pointed to this estate. Specifically, a luxurious mansion owned by a company no one seemed to know much about. I adjusted the scarf around my head, a poor disguise, but enough to make me blend in as just another driver waiting outside the estate. I had arranged to meet an estate security guard who agreed to talk for the right price. The man approached my car nervously, glancing over his shoulder as he slid into the passenger seat. He was sweating despite the evening cool. "You're late," I whispered. "I almost didn't come," he muttered, his voice shaking. "You don't know who you're messing with. These people, they don't play games." I handed him a brown envelope stuffed with cash. He hesitated, then snatched it and stuffed it into his pocket. "There is a warehouse," he said quickly. "Not far from here. Trucks come and go in the middle of the night. No paperwork, no inspections. Sometimes we go there to offload containers. Big ones. I don't know what's inside, but they're careful, like they're hiding something." "What kind of something?" I pressed. "I told you, I don't know." His voice cracked, and he glanced around nervously. "I've said too much already." "I have never met you before," he whispered, his face pale. Before I could ask more, he flung the car door open and bolted into the darkness, leaving me alone with more questions than answers. The next night, armed with my camera, a recorder, and a heavy dose of determination, I drove to the location the guard had described. The warehouse was enormous, surrounded by barbed wire and patrolled by armed guards. This wasn't your average storage facility. I parked my car in the shadow of a large tree, a safe distance away from the warehouse, and waited. Around midnight, the first truck arrived. Its headlights cut through the darkness as it rolled up to the gate. The guards waved it through without so much as a glance. I crept closer, keeping to the shadows. My heart pounded as I scaled a small hill that gave me a clear view of the warehouse yard. From my hiding spot, I could see the truck being unloaded. Men in dark clothing walked quickly, their movements efficient and practiced. Using my camera's zoom lens, I focused on the containers being offloaded. My stomach churned when I saw what they were handling. Crates of weapons, guns, ammunition, explosives. Enough to arm a small army. I snapped photo after photo, my hands shaking. This was it. Proof that the senator was involved in illegal arms trafficking. But as I adjusted my position for a better angle, my foot dislodged a loose rock. The sound was small but loud enough to catch the attention of one of the guards. "Who be that?" the man barked, shining his flashlight in my direction. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I crouched low, praying the shadows would hide me as the guard moved closer. My pulse thundered in my ears and time refused to slow down. Just as he was about to reach my hiding spot, a shout came from the yard. "Bro, come make we finish this thing." Reluctantly, the guard turned back, and I used the opportunity to crawl away, inch by agonizing inch, until I was far enough to make a run for it. When I finally reached my car, I collapsed into the driver's seat, my body trembling. My hands were still shaking as I started the engine and drove away, putting as much distance between myself and the warehouse as possible. Back at my apartment, I began piecing together everything I had: photos, documents, audio recordings. It was enough to blow the lid off the senator's operation. But before I could take the next step, I received a call from an unknown number. "Celine Yusuf, you have gone far enough," a deep threatening voice said. I checked the phone again, to confirm if there was a name or number, but like before, it was a private number. "Who is this?" I choked. "I don't know what you think you found, but it won't end well if you keep pushing." I quickly ended the call, my mind racing. How are they on to me so quickly? It was obvious, I needed to move as fast as possible and wrap this up, otherwise I will end up disappearing. Disregarding the risk, I reached out to the whistleblower and arranged for a meeting. He promised to provide more evidence. This was it. The date was set. Whatever information I could squeeze out of the whistleblower would be my final piece to wrap up this investigation. I hesitated but decided to go on the appointed night. I was cautious, arriving an hour early to scout the location. The building was dilapidated, with broken windows. It felt wrong, but the promise of crucial evidence was too tempting to ignore. As I waited, the unease grew. The whistleblower arrived late, looking more anxious than usual. "Do you have the evidence?" I asked, my voice low. "Not here," he whispered, glancing around. "It's in my car. Follow me." Alarm bells rang in my head, but I followed him to the parking lot. As we approached his car, two men stepped out of the shadows, their faces obscured by face caps. My instinct screamed at me to run, but before I could react, one of them grabbed my arm. "You've been asking too many questions," he growled. I struggled, my heart pounding as they tried to drag me toward a waiting van. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I twisted and kicked, managing to elbow one of them in the stomach. The other pulled out a gun, and my blood ran cold. "Let her go," a voice commanded. It was the whistleblower. To my shock, he was holding his own gun, pointing it at the man with the weapon. "This wasn't part of the deal," he added. The men hesitated, and in that split second, I broke free and ran. Shots rang out behind me, but I didn't look back. I sprinted into the night. My lungs burned as I zigzagged through the streets, trying to lose them. I finally found refuge in a night market, blending into the throng of people. My hands were trembling as I hailed a taxi, giving the driver an address far from my apartment. I had just discovered, in the most dangerous ways, that my whistleblower wasn't just a frightened insider. He was a double agent, feeding me just enough information to keep me chasing my tail while the senator covered his tracks. That night, I destroyed my SIM card and switched phone. The whistleblower's betrayal had shaken me, but it also steeled my resolve. The senator's men had come close, but they would not silence me. Over the next few days, I worked tirelessly and cautiously to secure the evidence and ensure it was shared with trusted colleagues. The story broke a week later, and the fallout was immediate. Protests erupted, investigations were launched, and Senator Sam Ibrahim's empire began to crumble. The senator's trial is still ongoing, and talks are going round that his connections extends to even higher powers. This means the senator's network was vast, and his reach extended beyond what I had uncovered. For now, though, I had survived. As I sit here, writing this account, I know one thing for certain: the truth is worth the risk. And as long as I had breath in my body, I would keep chasing the stories that others were too afraid to touch.